الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسوله الكريم وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing our lessons on the practical guide to seeking Islamic knowledge. Last week we spoke about the curriculum pertaining to fiqh. And now, inshallah, we'll talk about Arabic and the Quran. And obviously, the ulama, when they talk about these two subjects, Arabic and Quran, these are ulum, sciences which are alat. Means that they're subjects you need to get to where you need to go, instrumental knowledge. But Arabic obviously has levels that everybody is striving through or passing one over another. The beginning is to learn how to read, because you need to read Arabic in order to read the Quran and to recite the Quran with tajweed. And this is for a Muslim and a new Muslim, for those born to Islam and those who are new Muslims. And then after that, when someone knows how to read, they learn how to write. And after that, they can start learning the language itself. So this is what we also are trying to work through as well. But reading and writing, this is the beginning. You can't skip these two. Because ultimately, if you can't read well, then you're gonna have a hard time reading the Quran or the books of knowledge. And this happens quite a bit, that you didn't maybe master or you didn't perfect the reading. And likewise writing. And writing is also important, and we'll talk about that later. After someone has that basics, then they can start reading learn the language. And when it comes to language, Arabic language is many ulum, many sciences, but the three basics, which everyone studies. Number one, sarf, morphology. And number two, nahu, grammar. And number three, balagha, eloquence. And many of the ulama, they put it in that order because morphology is needed to know how the word is structured. And then nahu, grammar, is to know the categories of the words, and most importantly, al-i'rab, to know the ending of words, the case endings. So the difference between sarf and nahu then will be, the sarf has to do with the binya, the actual structure of the word, the beginning, the middle, and nahu is the ending. What's the ending, the case endings. And then balagha is eloquence, how to write, to read, so how to speak, write, in eloquent form. And the idea obviously is there's books for them, but because we're talking about basics, for the beginner, he can do these subjects in different ways. And the preferred way many of us have studied, and many people continue to do so, is through the Medina books, book 1, 2, and 3 of the older version. And then for the newer one, I think they have 1 to 8. I think they divided the books into smaller ones, but the old-fashioned one was 1, 2, and 3. So if you're doing 1 and 2, it gives you basics for the basic understanding of vocabulary and basics of morphology, and it progresses. So by the time you finish the second book, you have a lot of the conjugation of verbs. And you get to the third book, it's a lot of nahu. In fact, the third book is comparable to Ajurumiyya. It's comparable, but it's obviously different in presentation. So the Medina books is a great way to start, because language learning, you don't need to know solid grammar. You need more the basics. Like what are the words you're trying to use, how to use them, and the more you'll do it, the better you get. So Medina books are quite useful. And they also have, I think, a better effect, because some people like to go towards speaking Arabic. That's another subject. But if you start with this, you get to learn how to read the language, understand it, and that's preferable, because you don't want to just be learning how to speak it as if you're in the streets, unless you're living somewhere with Arabic speakers. You want to learn how to understand the books, especially the Quran and Sunnah first, and then the books of scholars, and later on, anything else that you need to read and learn. So Medina books are preferable, book 1, 2, and 3, but obviously for a beginner, reading and writing, and then they progress to book 1, 2, and 3. And the Arabic curriculum is a little bit more easygoing in the sense that it's not like the other ulum, in that it's not pressing on us every day and night. So scholars say, how much is wajib Arabic? And after you know how to recite, that's what you need, the Surah Fatiha, enough that you can able to understand and read the basics of the adhkar and the salah. So that much the ulama says fard ayn, wajib, on every single Muslim. And some scholars actually held the view that Arabic is fard ayn. Some scholars actually held that view. It's individual obligation. Right? Because they said you can't learn the deen otherwise. So the argument then will be, it's the more you know, the better. Right? But some of the ulama, they actually quote this. Imam Shafi'i, Imam Shawkani mentions this, that's fard ayn, every individual is Arabic. And the more you know, the better. But again, reading and writing, at least the basics. That's a good key. You can go later and you could learn as you go along. When it comes to memorization of the Quran, that which is necessary for every Muslim is at least Surah Fatiha. The ulama, they agree that a person who's able to learn Fatiha has to learn Fatiha. That's the wajib. But then after that, how much do they need? We know everything else beyond Fatiha is not wajib to memorize. But some of the ulama, like Shaykh bin Baz, rahimahullah, in Durus al-Muhimma, the important lessons, he says every beginner or lay Muslim should know Fatiha, Surah Fatiha until Zilzal. Surah Fatiha, then Nas until Zilzal. That's the basics. At least you can pray your salah, 5 daily salah. And we're talking about lay person who's not trying to memorize the Quran or anything. At least he knows that much. You can read the salawat with those. So the idea is the more that you know beyond that, this is better. But memorizing the Quran is wajib. But for student knowledge, is highly, highly, highly recommended. Some scholars, they debated if it's a condition of student knowledge or scholar or not. That's a bigger discussion. But definitely, after you have that basic, you go to the next stage, which is more Quran. The more you know, the better. But we say beginner, at least Al-Fatiha. And Fatiha for the validity of the prayer. So Fatiha, when we say memorize the Quran with tajweed, right, proper tajweed, you have to know the makharij and the huruf, or the sifat, all the basics, you need to pronounce it properly, so if salah is valid. And then later on you would learn other surahs like that. So the benefit then is that after a person is finishing these, the next level he can go deeper into them. So we already talked about Tawheed now, Aqidah, Fiqh, Arabic and Quran. And so a person will go through the most important, then the next most important like this. And some of them you could do at one time. For example, someone could make a schedule, Tawheed, and then something of Tahara and Salah. Later he can go to Aqidah, then he can do something Tahara and Salah. He doesn't have to do everything one by one. He can do things in a schedule if he wishes, or he can go one by one. But ultimately, if someone finishes all of this, you could say this person has the basics. He knows how to read Arabic, he knows how to write it, he knows the basic Tawheed, a little bit of Aqidah, he knows how to pray Salah, he knows Tahara. That's a basic Muslim. And that's, again, this shows you the basic levels shouldn't be, he just prays. Because we have said, pray properly. So we need to raise the bar too for the awam too. They say that to be a base Muslim, we're not saying you need to know all of these books, but at least you could say, look at the levels we mentioned. We mentioned 2-3 levels within these topics. At least he has something of this. He knows what Tawheed is. He knows what the 6 pillars of Iman. He asked him how to pray, what's sujood sound. He knows a little bit of the rules. And most people, they know it, but being structured is important so that you will have clarity. Beyond that, you move towards knowledges that most of us are interested in, which is the knowledge that it is Fard Kifayi, and maybe next time we'll talk about that in terms of where do you go next for fiqh, for example, in Arabic, etc. But the basics we're talking about here, and there's no room to skip these basics, because if you skip them, you will pay for it later. Means if somebody skipped a step and then jumped over, then it's not going to benefit later, the higher level, because some of the things you should know, he doesn't know, and then later on, he has to go back and learn them. So oftentimes, people, they skip it because they don't want to. Who really wants to sit down and learn how to read? But if you can't read, then how are you going to understand? So you're going to pay the price later when you don't understand what Sheikh's saying, or you're reading something wrong, and then you say, well, you should have just went back. And that's important, because when it comes to knowledge, there's no such thing as shame. All of knowledge is considered valuable, all of it. Because it's ilm anyways. It's ilm. So if it's knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's religion be understood through it, then it's valuable. You shouldn't belittle one over the other or make zuhud. Instead, become like a zahid from one knowledge or another. Some people, for example, they skip certain subjects. If it's difficult, you come back later, but you're eventually going to come back. So the goal is, after all of this, that's the basics, inshallah. So it's important for us to be mindful of that, especially for people who are in family, who want to learn the deen. We tell them, okay, start with these, inshallah, things, and Allah will help them. Let's talk about memorization now, quickly. Memorization is another technique or tip you need when it comes to seeking knowledge. And memorization is very important. As you can already tell, some things you have to memorize, or hope to memorize, like the Quran, a hadith, etc. But there are also ways to memorize. So what are the tips for memorization? Let's talk about that. So we talked about last week writing down things to help you memorize. And that's the first step. You should write. Writing will help you memorize. But the value of memorization is that it allows you to remember things, and what you memorize stays with you. And what you write down and you don't memorize can disappear easily. There's many stories, we don't have time, but the many stories of the Imams that they learned this and they narrated that writing down is only beneficial if you memorize it. Otherwise, you write it down and you put it in your notebook. If your notebook burns, or someone stole it, or things got your computer got corrupted, all the files, then all your knowledge is gone. You see, this is often what happens to somebody later on in their life. They say, oh, I wrote down something, I lost it. And I had a lot of benefits. You got to start over again. But if you memorize it, it will help you because it's always with you. So Shaykh Salih Husaymi, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, he mentions, our Shaykh Ibn Uthaymin, rahimahullah, said, we memorized a little and read a lot, so we benefit from what we memorized more than what we read. Ta'zeem al-Ilm, page 91. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymin said, we memorized a little and read a lot. When he said little, it means comparatively. So we benefited from what we memorized more than what we read. And this is the truth. When you read, you will forget. But when you memorize, you can recall. And that's why so many of us, when we read something, later on we forgot what we read. But if you wrote some notes, like, oh yeah, there it is. There's the summary of what it is. So memorization has great value. So how do you memorize? Every scholar, every teacher has a different recommendation. But generally, there's some usul, the ulama, they agree to. First one is memorizing small portions. You memorize a little bit at a time, not a lot. That's because a little will stay with you, and little is manageable, and little is easy for you to start with. But if you start with big amounts, pages, then not only is it going to become a burden in the future, you may even forget what you memorized and become disheartened because it's big. For example, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages a day. It's possible some memorizes more than that, but if you do a little bit each time, it's stronger. Imam al-Khatib al-Baghdadi, he writes, rahimahullah, it's necessary for the beginner to make firm what he memorizes, and he should not take a lot, rather taking a little by little in accordance to what his memory can handle. And it's easier for his understanding. For verily Allah the Exalted said, and those who disbelieve say, why is not the Quran revealed to us all at once? Thus it is sent down in parts, that we may strengthen your heart thereby. So Surah Furqan, ayah 32. So the Shaykh used that proof that the Quran came down part by part. So Nabi ﷺ used to memorize each part, and he used to narrate to the Sahaba, they used to also memorize it. So that's the fact that we can also see why the Quran comes down in pieces, part by part. But the benefit is a little according to what you can handle. Everybody's little will be different then. So maybe one person can memorize a lot, for another person it's considered a lot, but for him it's okay. So how do you determine what's enough for you? You would test yourself. In the beginning you start maybe something like half a page of a book, for example, a metan, or a page of the Quran. We'll talk about the Quran in a second. And then you practice, memorize that, and tomorrow morning or the next day you try to review it. If you can't remember anything or half of it or less of it, then that means it's too much for you, your portion. But if you did it enough, when you wake up the next morning to recite it, it should be there. It means that was enough, that was easy for you. And that's what you want. That which is easy, because it's going to allow you to keep going. Alimu yassiru. Teach and make it easy. Yassiru la tu'assiru. Make it easy, don't make it difficult. So you need to start off by setting your own standards. So try half page. Tomorrow morning you couldn't review it. Okay, go a few lines. Half page is too easy. You're going to do one page then. And if one page is easier than 2 pages, and then some scholars obviously they start talking about what happens if you're going beyond that. But little is important, and we mentioned the story before about Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash, Shu'bah, the narrator of the recitation from Asim. So we have Hafs an Asim and Shu'bah an Asim. His story, Shu'bah, his name is Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash. Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash, rahimahullah, is Imam Ahmed's teacher. How he learned the Quran, how he memorized, he used to do 5 ayahs. 1 ayah a day first, then it became 5 ayahs a day. So it's important. The story that way he learned, most of us would say it's going to take too long to memorize the Quran like that, for example. 1 ayah a day, scholars say if you memorize 1 ayah a day, it takes you 17 years to memorize the Quran. It's okay, most of us, Wallahu alam, will probably live to 17 anyways. Yes, right? So even 1 ayah is still good. See, some brothers don't realize 10 years have already passed, brothers. COVID has passed. We could have memorized the Quran then. So the reality is there are ways to get around that, but even 1 ayah, 17 years. But he said, I used to do Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash. His name is Abu Bakr ibn Ayyash. His nickname is Shu'bah. He is the second Rawi of Hafs, of Asim. So Hafs an Asim ibn Najud, Shu'bah an Asim ibn Najud. So he's the second narrative of his recitation. So we know him in the books of Hadith, Hafiz, the Alim, just teaching Ahmed. He memorized Hadith, forget about just the Quran. How he started, when he came to Asim, he said, I came to recite to him, and he said, you're weak, your memorization, 1 ayah a day. So he said, I thought to myself, I used to do 1 ayah, I'm not going to finish the Quran anytime soon before the Shaykh dies with this pace. So I asked him, can I do more? He said, 5, that's it. 5 ayahs at a time. He said, I came to him night and day, rain or shine, winter and summer, doesn't matter. And he became a half of the Quran, knowing that becomes one of the rat of the qira'ah. In fact, later in his biography, he mentioned the Khatm al-Quran 14 years in a row. Every day for tahajjud, 40 years straight, he said to finish the Quran in the tahajjud. See, that's the end of his life. The beginning, 1 ayah a day, brothers. See, when we look at the end of the story, we're like, mashallah, he used to khatm every night. Yeah, start from the beginning, where he started from. So me and you, that's our problem. We look at the end of the story, we say, mashallah, how the person became a hero. We don't forget how he did that. So we have to look backwards and say, how did he get there? 1 ayah a day. Some of us, we can do way more than 1 ayah a day. But the problem we have is consistency. So if you stick to your pattern, whatever it is, don't give up on it. And that story, Imam Dhahabi mentions in Sirah A'lam al-Nubala. It's a beautiful story, a reminder for us that we can all become great memorizers if we follow the way of the Hufaz, the memorizers. So a little bit is you're going to shorten your amount. And the second tip is you repeat a lot. Second tip, you're going to do a lot of repetition. That was the secret of the Salaf. Little amount, a lot of repetition. We say a lot, brothers, of repetition. We're not talking about 1-2 times. We're talking about you're repeating somewhere between 20 to 100. And some of the great memorizers, they go up to 500, 1,000 on one text. Imagine, one hadith. And this is the secret of the Salaf. Even they knew Arabic, they knew all this stuff, but they used to repeat something so much, it became like how we have Fatiha. We don't know if anyone forgot Fatiha yet, unless they went, something went wrong with their mind. So how come Fatiha is so strong in our mind, brothers? 17 times a day, every day. So imagine you had a hadith like that 17 times a day or 10 times a day, every day. You never forget it. Falaq al-Nas, same thing. You read it so much, you can't forget it. But what happens when you memorize things? You memorize it 1, 2, 3 times. And tomorrow you're like, mashallah, I have it. The next day I still have it. The end of the week I forgot it. Because you're still thinking you have it. You didn't review it. So Salaf used to repeat a lot, brothers, a lot. So the Arab, they used to do this as well, but the ulama, that was their secret. And some of them, they mention up to 500 times per hadith. So that's why when we hear Abu Zur'a al-Razi, rahimahullah, the great Imam, Ahmed's student, who was also hafiz, memorized something like also even 1 million hadith. That means athar, everything. He's at the level of Ahmed, maybe he's that level, because he used to review Ibn Ahmed. They said he knew all the hadith like he knows Surah Nas. It's all the same to him. Why? Because how many times do they repeat these things? So the qa'idah then is, al-kalamu idha takarrara, taqarrara. That's the qa'idah the ulama they mention. Al-kalam, speech. Idha takarrara, if it's repeated, taqarrara, it becomes firm and firmly established. Al-kalamu idha takarrara, taqarrara. If speech is repeated, then it becomes firmly established. And this was mentioned by Imam al-Zarkhashi and others in Burhan fi Ulum al-Quran, and many ulama they repeated. Al-kalamu, speech, any speech. إِذَا تَكَرَّرَ, if you were to repeat it, تَقَرَّرَ, you will make it firm. Right? And it's also important to understand that that's what we should be doing, especially when you know that your memorization initially is not as strong as you would like it to be. Because it's a muscle, it grows. Memory is a muscle. In the beginning is weak, then it gets very strong. And some of the ulama also mention another qa'idah, a principle, قلل المقدار, make less your amount, وأكثر التكرار, and increase your repetition. قلل المقدار, lower the amount you're memorizing, وأكثر التكرار, and increase your repetition. Khalas, that's the secret to memorizing anything. The hardest page of the Quran, the hardest hadith, the longest one, you repeat it, khalas. And some of them they say that repetition teaches the donkey even. When a donkey is, but it's true, even a donkey can learn through repetition. And it's true, most of us, we have, maybe our memory is weak because we grew up in the West. In the West, we don't memorize anything. Right? You go to school, they give you the formula sheet, they give everything to you, that's it. Critical thinking. The most of our memory is like water. And with screens, it's becoming worse. That's one of the weakening of the memories is screens. So because of this, our memory became weak. So to strengthen it, you have to do exercise like this. Take one hadith and one ayah, you just repeat it. So the rule is small amount, extra, lots of repetition. We'll look at a practical example in a second. So the ulama, the salaf, used to do this. So this is a secret that they narrate to us. So we need to be like them. So the first principle we took was small portions. Second one, lots of repetitions. The third is you recite out loud. You have to recite out loud. Memorization is not out loud, never silently. So if you want to memorize, you read out loud. Abu Hilal Askari, rahimahullah, one of the Imams, the past, he says, it was said, the ulama said, silent reading is for understanding, and reading out loud is for memorization. That's a qaida, the ulama, they use the principle. When you're understanding something, you recite it quietly. Like when you go to the libraries, right? But it's just reading quietly. That's for fahm. On hifz, out loud. That's when you go to the madrasa, everyone's yelling, right? The kids look like they're yelling. They're memorizing. So when you do the opposite, that's one of the problems. You find you're not memorizing anything because you're not loud enough. You can't hear it, and this is a secret. When you read out loud, you look at it too, it increases your chance of memorization, because we'll see the more tools or more senses you use, the stronger the hifz. So we can't read with your eyes only, eyes and mouth. Read out loud. Or you listen to it first, and you repeat. And you listen and you repeat, and you listen and you repeat. So this is another secret the ulama they mention, and it's also something most of us already know. But the Salaf used to learn like this, and that's why they used to recite out loud to themselves. Again, that's what someone preferred to sit in a closed space by themselves, just to repeat out loud. So it could be in your room, it could be in another place. So you try to avoid places with lots of noise or distraction so that you don't get distracted. Another benefit we take, and the fourth one, is that when it comes to memorizing any text, especially the Quran, you stick to one mushaf or one copy. So when it comes to the Quran, only one mushaf, you stick to it the whole of your life as much as you can. Even if it rips or it gets lost, you get another one like it. And when it comes to a matan, one text. So this is why the teacher is always strict. When he tells you bring your mushaf, your own one, he doesn't tell you bring second one, because your mind will memorize that text. So this is a secret. Abdul Qaadir, Muqbil Zahra, said, our father used to order us to use one copy of the mushaf until it became easy for us to know the places of the Quran, places of the verses in the Quran, what page it began and when it ended, and which aided us in perfecting memorization of the Quran, and was as if we're reading from the mushaf from our mind. Sineen Mahayati Walidi. So this is her autobiography or points of her life with her father, Sayyid Muqbil bin Abdul. And this is the ulama, they always mention this. So why? Because if you stick with one text, you can see it in front of you. You know exactly what page it is. So there's a mushaf, some of them they call the mushaf al-hufaz. Every page starts and ends with a verse. Why? So that the next verse doesn't carry over. So you know this page, that page. And some of them they memorize to that point where they know this page is coming, that page is coming, this place, eye is on that side. So they know how to visualize it, so it's easy to read it. So the benefit is that if you have one copy, you always keep reading it. Not only memorize the words and the or sequence, you memorize the positions. So if you make a mistake, you know it's a mistake because you're too down the page. See, and that's why sometimes you see people with good memory, they know how to fix themselves. They go back and you wonder, how do they know that? Because they're following the mushaf that you have. And a lot of the ulama, they advise this. So stick to one copy, even if it's a matan, fiqh, hadith, aqidah, one matan, you have one, just stick to that matan. Don't keep changing it around because your memory will get confused. Another benefit they also mention is that you listen to the audio or the recitation of others. That also is very helpful. So if it's a Quran, you play a good reciter, whose tajweed is good, whose hifd is good. If it's a matan of another book, like another manual, then you listen to the audio. So you can see how it's pronounced and you repeat. And this is how the people in the past used to read the Quran. Until today, people do it. Like when the kids learn Quran, that's how they're taught, bitilqeen. You recite them the ayah, they repeat, the next ayah, they repeat, next ayah, they repeat, like this. And this is how Jibreel alayhi salam taught Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Okay, scholars say that's how Jibreel used to read the Quran. So in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala recited to Jibreel, and Jibreel recited to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. In the Ramadan, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to review with his teacher. Allamahu shadidul quwwa. Jibreel is his teacher. So how did he teach? Hafiz ibn Hajar says in Fath al-Bari, he used to read the ayah, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam repeats the ayah. Next ayah, repeat the ayah. Next ayah, like this. And every day, every night, they do that, the whole Quran is done. So that's how the teacher, you see many times the teacher will teach the student, and that's also helpful to listen and then repeat, or you listen and you read with them to get the pronunciation correct, so you won't memorize wrong and have to recorrect to yourself or to fix the recitation. And that happens a lot. If you memorize the wrong, it's hard to forget the mistake. So when picking the Qur'an, pick the ones who are known for the tajweed, not the famous reciters, because you're in the beginning stage, you're trying to memorize the book. For the Qur'an, you want to memorize the Qur'an, pick the reciters who recite with good tajweed, not maybe the famous reciters who maybe their tajweed is good but they're a little more lax in some places, or they're fast. Pick the ones who are tajweed is good. So scholars, they mention, for example, we know Husari, right? Or Minshawi, or Abdullah Basfar is very good. Abdullah Basfar. Or for example, you can go Hudayfi. I know these are, we know their names, but that's when you're memorizing, stay with them. They don't go to the new ones. No, because they're going to read differently. Some of them, they are reading with tajweed, yes, but they're not always going to focus on. So they may make some laxity, and you'll learn that way. So stick with that. When you obviously memorize something, later on you can listen to somebody else and get a different, right, voice or prestigious style. But it's very important to stick to the ones ulama advice. A good reciter who's both good in tajweed and nice to listen to, Abdullah Basfar. It's very easy. Good voice, good pace. He's not too slow, not too fast. And there's many, right? Ibrahim Akhdar, so many others. Okay, another benefit the ulama mentioned when it comes to memorization, you pick an appropriate time to memorize. And for everybody, it's different. Some people early morning, some people late at night. The ulama, they differed heavily on this. Some of them said the best time is after Fajr, based on the hadith about the barakah of Fajr. Some say after Fajr, and some say after Isha, nighttime, everyone asleep, because of the ayah in Surah Muzammil. It's better for understanding, and also it's quiet, nobody's awake. So everyone knows himself best. You pick a time is good for you. It doesn't always have to be one time. You can pick timings which are throughout the day, a little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit there. Doesn't matter, as long as you get it. So some people, they're too focused on the time. You pick a time that's convenient. Maybe you work early, so the afternoon is better for you after Asr. Or maybe you have time after Asr, or like early morning after afternoon, so you go after the morning. Whatever time it is, you stick to that time all the time. That's important. Every day, same time. And the next one benefit, same place. The next one, same place. So if it's in your room, or this corner of the masjid, or that place, same time, same place, every day. Without fail. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. Yeah, sometimes something will come up, but you're trying to go for that area, that time, all the time. That's your goal. Because ultimately, memorization requires you to have consistency. Otherwise, you can't do it. And some of the Salaf are very strict in this. They will be very careful on their habit. They will not want to lose that habit. So one of the Imams, once he was there, Jum'ah time, before the class. There's no Jum'ah usually in classes. So he was there in the masjid where the teacher teaches. In Jum'ah time, there's no class. I told him, what are you doing here? He said, this is what the teacher teaches. I don't want to lose the habit of coming to the class all the time. So even no class, he's still sitting there. He's sitting in Jum'ah where the class is. There's no class. He said, I just want to keep the habit. I don't want to lose it. See, these Imams, how serious they are. And that shows you again that for them, it's always they're going to try their best to be there because ilm is that serious. So for us, we have to put our pressure on ourselves. Okay, this is the time we designated. That's it. You're going to be there, inshallah, time and place. And this is very important because it'll push you to know, okay, what time is it? Oh, it's time to memorize. That's it. There can't be interruptions. And so that's why you pick a time that's ideal. If your schedule is very chaotic or very busy, you can do a little bit after every salah. You don't have to be too strict. But that's the thing. Little is better than nothing. And there's always time. There's always time. Okay, there's always time. So this excuse, I don't have time, is a lie. The ulama have time, you have time. Right? And the ulama are very busy, but they have time. So find the time. And so some people, they will see, they will do after every salah. And some of the ulama, they were very keen in using the time where they're just doing something else. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen mentioned before that he used to review his Quran. His student Shaykh Sami Sughair mentions our Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen used to recite the Quran going and coming to the masjid. So every day he recite 2 juz per day. Half juz coming to the masjid, half juz coming back. Half juz coming, that's how he used to review his Quran. And when he was walking, you can't ask him anything, you can't talk to him. And the student they learn. When Shaykh Uthaymeen is walking, leave him alone. That's it. It's time for him to review his Quran. So when he gets to the masjid, it's different. Now it's open. So he says that's how he used to review his Quran with all his schedule. Imagine that. So when you see something like this, how high the ambitions have, just so someone says, how far is the masjid? Right? Maybe 20, 30 minutes. Right? Depends how far he's walking. But he's walking to get the sunnah of walking. Sometimes you walk barefoot, another sunnah, and reviewing the Quran. You see, those are the ulama. 3 in 1. But some of us, we're barely doing anything on the way to masjid, right? So you can do something. You can't read the Quran, put the Quran on. And if you can't walk to it, at least drive and review. And you see some people, they do that. And Sahaba, they were keen to do this. Some on the riding animal. At that time, camel horses. They would read the Quran on the way. Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, that's what he mentioned to Mu'adh bin Jabal, that he used to do that. How does he read the Quran? It says, I review riding and standing and sitting. So obviously, so that means review. So you don't have to look at the Mus'haf necessarily. But you're in your car, you go into the masjid. Bismillah, read some Juz Amma. You get stuck in traffic. Perfect chance. Right? طيب, with memorization also, now let's talk about the Quran very quickly. the Quran is the most important thing to memorize for the person who's trying to memorize something. And obviously, it doesn't negate that you can't memorize other things, but the Quran is the most important. It's the kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So some quick tips about memorizing the Quran. Scholars, they have different, again, recommendations. I mentioned a lot of these rules are applicable, but some ulama, they have specific methods that can be useful. So we'll mention, for example, Shaykh Abdul Muhsin al-Qasim, Hafizullah ta'ala, the Imam of Masjid Nabawi. He has a book, Aysir al-Tariqa, li Hifz al-Kitabillah or Hifz al-Quran al-Kareem. The quickest way to memorize the Quran. And he's memorized the Quran and many things, so he's going to show it's his method to memorize the Quran. And it's using translated, it's a book in English. And the Shaykh, he's authored those small books to memorize, Butun Talib Ilm. He knows a lot about memorization. So before getting to his advice, some of the scholars also recommend some other tips. If you want more, you can read a kitab. Shaykh Faisal Hashidi has an excellent book called Sina'atul Hifz, manufacturing or producing memorization. Okay, Faisal Hashidi, it's a PDF, fantastic. It teaches you all about the tips of memorizing the Quran. The people, the past, present, many, many benefits. It's amazing. And he has another one about the virtues of the Quran. But this is called Sina'atul Hifz. And there he talks about a lot of things. So one of the things he talks about is using more than one faculty to memorize. So you have your ears, you have your eyes, and you have your hand. So hearing, seeing, and writing. These are 3 ways to memorize something. So see the Mus'haf, for example, listen to it recited, and writing. And where's the proof for this? Hafid ibn Kathir, rahimahullah, in his tafsir of Surah Alaq. Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq. In the ayah 1-5, Surah Alaq, the Shaykh says Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala starts by talking about recite and read, and then he taught man to write. So Hafid ibn Kathir says knowledge can be represented sometimes by writing, sometimes by listening, and sometimes by seeing. And so all 3 faculties can be used. And the more you use these faculties, more than one of them, the stronger the hifz is going to be. So for example, if you listen to it and you repeat it, you're using your mouth and your ear, stronger than someone who just listens to it and doesn't repeat it. True, right? Because he's doing more than one. He's listening, he's repeating. Compare that to someone who just listened, he's going to memorize it, but not as strong as the one who repeated it. So what happens? You listen to your reciter, you listen to him, then you pause, and you repeat. Or you read with him sometimes if you want to read and want to get the pace, it's also fine. And some of the Sahaba memorize Quran just like that. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam used to recite to them, they listen, then they memorize. So really, it's actually powerful, the listening and the repeating. The repeating is the key. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Allah mentioned Surah Qiyamah, he used to read quickly when the Jibreel used to write and recite, and Allah told him not to harrak bi lisanak ta'jala bi. Don't quickly hasten to repeat it. We'll let you memorize it. Just listen to it. Allah secure for him to memorize it. As for us, you listen, then when the Qari is finished, you repeat. But imagine you didn't just listen, even though you can memorize. But it's not the most ideal, right? So Amr, the Sahabi, Amr bin Salama, many of us, we know him. He's a Sahabi who used to lead the Salah when he's 6 or 7 years old. Amr bin Salama. He's a Sahabi, 6 or 7, he became the Imam. He mentions Sahih Bukhari himself. How did he know so much Quran? This is the part we all skip. His tribe came to Islam late. So he says, the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam came to us and gave us da'wah, we accepted Islam. And then he told us, okay, those who knows most Quran amongst you, leads the Salah. He said, no one knew anything more than me. So the question is, how does he know? No one else knows. So he says the travelers, Sahaba, used to come to give da'wah to our people, and they used to pass by us, and they were used to read Quran to us. So I used to listen to them and memorize it. Allah, look at the rest. He used to memorize what Sahaba used to read as travelers. They're giving da'wah to them and reciting them. He said, I heard it, and I used to memorize it. I became the Imam. See, sometimes we tell ourselves, I don't have a teacher. Oh, you don't have a tape or a computer? We used to use tapes, brothers. Back in those days, the tape broke, you're finished. And so most of us, we used to go like that. Now we have MP3, all these videos, and what's happening? The memorization is getting worse because nobody's inspired anymore. Right, most of us would say, what's the benefit? Some will probably think, what's the point of memorizing? The reward of memorization is so high, brothers. We'll have to try our best. Listen, repeat. And if you want to go to a higher level, like we said, you have your same copy of the text every time. So it's another secret. You keep looking at the same book. So you're going to look at the pages, and that's how some of the ulama in the past used to memorize. They asked Imam Bukhari, how do you memorize so much? He said, Adim nadar al-kitab. I used to look at the book a lot. Like, how long did you write Sahih Bukhari? 16 years. Compiling this book. Of course, he memorized everything, but he said he used to often look at it. So that's why his memorization is rock solid. So looking even at a book a lot, most of us know, if you read something again and again, you know exactly every word in it. Maybe even the order is going to be very easy for you. So that's another benefit. But then the writing is the last one. The writing is the hard one. And some of the people still back home in different countries, they write. They tell the kids to write, right? And famous example, those in Mauritania, the Shanaqita, why the Shanqiti tribe or this tribe in Mauritania, they're known for this because their memorization is amongst the strongest memorization. And Shaykh Faisal Hashdi in this kitab, he talks about it. There's a book, I found it as well. It's called How the Shanaqita Memorize. Tells you all the secrets and good, bad, and plus and bonus, plus and positive, negatives of that. But in there, he talks about how they memorize. Well, you always wonder, those people, how they memorize is so good. Because the number of times they repeat, you would be shocked. And they're right. So when the child learns the Quran, he learns how to read the Quran. And remember, they don't have musahaf, they use the lawh, the long board. And they write down the Quran. So they have to learn first ilm rasm, how to write. Then they write down their portion per day. Then they repeat that. So they write the whole Quran by the time they finish. And they repeat it. He says, how much do you repeat a day? Twice a day. In the morning and the evening. The morning time between 100 to 1,000 repetition. For that portion. In the afternoon, another 100 to 1,000. And it's tasmi', then they read to the teacher. Imagine you're reciting that per portion, not the whole Quran, per portion. And you finish the Quran, some of them, the memorization becomes so strong, they can leave the Quran for years and still know it. And that's the real the hifz. They don't review the whole kitab. Because by the time they finish, how many layers? They went through all of them. So that shows you, if you follow these repetitive techniques, yes, it's probably tedious, but the fruits are a lifelong. This is the thing. Maybe some of us, what we forget is if you repeat a lot, it's tiring, but then you will thank yourself. Let's talk about Shaykh al-Muhsin Qasim, what he said, what's his technique. So in the book, he says that you start, first of all, by memorizing maximum 2 pages a day, or 2.5 pages max. You don't go more than that. That's his first advice. 2.5 pages per day max. Even if you could do more, don't do, he said, because you're going to weaken your memorization. So 1 page after Fajr, 1 after Asr. That's his advice. 2 pages per day. If you're going to do this, you'll finish the Quran in 10 months and 6 days. See, brothers? 10 months, you finish the Quran in 6 days. According to Shaykh Hash's chart, if you stick to that pattern the year. If you do 1 page a day for your own benefit, it'll take you 1 year and 8 months, so about 2 years. You're doing 1 page. If you do half a page, it'll take you 3 months and 3 years and 4 months. Half a page will take you 3 years or so. 1 page will take you 1 year, almost 2 years. And 2 pages will take you less than a year, 10 months and 6 days. So 2 pages is really good because if you finish the Quran in 1 year, that's very good. I mean, there are people who finish the Quran way faster, but that's not about a race, right? That's the thing, our first problem. Who's racing? What award are you going to get for that? Right? The goal is, if you want to be hafid, you know the Quran or not. That's what we want to know. So Shaykh's talking about here, strong memorization, not about fast. So what do? He says you take the page you're trying to memorize in the morning, for example, and you use the example of Surah Jumu'ah. Surah Jumu'ah has 8 ayahs in the first page. So he says the first ayah, you repeat it 20 times. Everything's 20. It's going to be 20, 20, 20 all the time. So repeat the first verse 20 times. Then you do the second verse 20 times. The third one after that, 20 times. And the fourth one, 20 times, you stop. Why? Because 4 is the half page. So every ayah, 1 to 4, 20, 20, 20. 20 times each. Again, first, if you don't know how to read it, first maybe you want to listen to it first to make sure you know how to read it. So first ayah, 20 times. Second ayah, 20. Third time, 20. Fourth one, 20. Stop. That's half the page. Once you finish that, then you do 1 to 4, 20 times. Because you have to connect the whole page now, right? So ayahs 1 to 4, half page 20 times. You know, most of us get excited, go to the end of the page. No, but half page. That's why when you get to the beginning, you're like, oh, I forgot. Right? So you have to start all over again. So you got to midpoint, you go back. And then you repeat the same thing for the 5th to the 8th. You do the same thing, 20, 20, 20, all the way down. Then when you finish the 8, you do 5 to 8, 20 times. Then you do the whole page. The whole page, then you're going to read that 20 times. So first half, 20 times, after each one 20 times, and then second half 20 times, after each one 20 times, the whole thing 20 times. Now someone will say, how long is it going to take you? Well, it's not going to take you that long, because how long does it take to do 20 times? You can put a timer on. It makes you take 1 to 2 minutes per ayah. And that's a hifd that's strong. You're not going to forget that one. It's very strong. And most of us, we know, if you're a good memorizer, you can memorize a page in 20 minutes. Someone who's weak memorizing, it can take an hour, maybe 2. But if you do this system, by the time you finish your 1 hour or 2, it's very strong. So that's the thing. Sometimes you forget about how long we're sitting anyways. Test yourself anyways. Sit down, put a timer on and see how much it's going to take you generally to do a page. You wouldn't probably be any faster if you did this. But the difference is, when you wake up tomorrow, or in this case, your Asr time comes, okay, read your page you did in the morning. Right? That should be very easy because you just did in the Fajr. But the real test is the next day. Because the next day, before you start the new memorization, so after Fajr is the first page. After Asr, the same again, the second page now. So at the end of the day, you have 2 pages. When you finish the process, the next morning, before Fajr time, what are you going to read? The 2 pages yesterday first. And then you're going to see how the 20 times help you. Because you're going to read them and it's going to go. But if you get stuck, that's because you probably didn't do enough times. And some people, they increase. So 20 is a good measure. According to him, this is the easiest way. And he would know better because Hifz is very strong. And this is a benefit we learned, that if we follow something like this, I mean, who can't memorize then? That's the question. Who can't? The one who can't is the one who's either skipping the 20 or doing less, or maybe he's not even doing the Hifz. And you notice that later. The one who's not memorizing anything is the one who's not doing any memorization, or he's skipping, going too fast, or he's not consistent. So then the Shaykh says, when you finish all this, you keep going, and you're going to do the Quran like this. Obviously, the more you read in the Quran like this, it gets easier. Until later on, you don't even need to do all this 20 times to finish it. But he says you got to do it for every page. Because what you want is strength. And that's the difference between a good memorizer and a weak one. The one who memorized, repeated a lot, his memorization is very strong. Whereas the other one is weak, he needs to review more. The Shaykh also keeps going. If you want more, go and Google the PDF, the easiest way to memorize the Noble Quran. He talks about then what to do when you finish the Quran, how to compile the Quran, and also reality, which is after the first time you memorize the Quran, after the first 1-2 years, you might start forgetting a lot of the Quran. He says, don't lose heart. That's common. A lot of people happens. You finish the Quran, now it's like, oh, I forgot everything. It's okay. Because once you memorize one time, you have it. You have like a soft copy in your head. Start again. It's very easy. But when you don't have that first copy, it's like starting afresh. It's not the same. The one who forgot. Remember who memorized something and reviews, never like the one who memorized it, didn't memorize it. It's never the same. So even the great memorizers, they're always reviewing the Quran. Ta'ahadul Quran, right? They're always reviewing it. So what's the difference? They review very quickly, for us, we're memorizing. Some of the Hufad, you see them, if there's Ramadan coming, just get ready quickly because they're easy for them. They already memorized it. But me and you, if we start doing what they're doing, we can't catch up with them because he'll go fast. He can review a juz, 2 juz. Whereas us, we're going to imagine you're trying to complete that. And some of the great memorizers, you could tell the difference. A great memorizer, Allah gave him tawfiq, his memory is that good, he can memorize a lot. Like Hafiz Hakimi, rahimahullah, the great Imam, he's nicknamed Hafiz Hakimi for a reason. Him and Ahmed Najmi were students at the same time, but Hafiz Hakimi is way ahead. He said, me and him used to compete. I used to do 1 hizb, memorization per day in Ramadan. He used to do 1 juz a day. 1 juz. He finished Quran for shahr. That's why he's Hafiz Hakimi, guys. Hafiz Hakimi, juz per day. So I used to read him when I would do 1 hizb. Like half the juz. I was trying, and it's hard. I couldn't keep up with him. He's Hafiz Hakimi. But imagine someone like that, yeah, these are ayat min ayatillah. These are different. And there are people like that. One of the Salafi memorized in 10 days, I think, or something like this, right? He locked himself in a room. Some guy gave him some kind of bad words. He got angry. So I'll show you. And he locked the door. They came back. He finished the Quran. But this is different. These are Salaf, guys. We're not like them, right? Allahu Akbar. So but people in our time, there are people who did it in 3 months, in 1 year, 1 month. But these are not the norm. These are rarities. What we want is like 10 months. That's a very good goal. If you told yourself from now, today, until next year, next Ramadan before it comes, we're going to finish. Wallahi, you can. Wallahi, قَدْ يَسَّرْنَا الْقُرْآنَ لِذِكْرِ. Many of us, we realize that we're not doing the process. That's why we're falling off. Either work out in the way, family. Something happened, they stopped you. Otherwise, you were going. Another benefit, scholars mentioned that if somebody can't memorize, like right now, she can't sit down for the whole, let's say an hour, after every salah, give yourself 10 minutes. So for example, if you told yourself after 5 salah, 10 minutes every salah, I'm going to sit down and review the Quran and memorize, or memorize it. 10 times 5 is 50 minutes. It's almost an hour. So some of them say, you go make it 15 minutes, then mashallah, there you go. But most of us can do it. After adhkar, finish, get your Quran out, 10 minutes. You put a timer, as soon as 10 minutes, get up and leave. Just watch. You're memorizing a lot of Quran while you're just doing 10 minutes. The people are just at the shoe area, just wasting their time. And you notice that you're not going to leave anytime soon anyways. Most likely, you're not going to leave in 10 minutes. But imagine you just did that. See how you can make a good habit like this. So that's another helpful habit to help us. One last benefit about memorizing. How about reviewing the Quran? There's so much rules, or it's not rules, tips to memorize or reviewing the Quran. The easy way of it, Shaykh Faisal Hashid mentions, many scholars, they mention the rule. For every juz, you do review 1 page a day. So if you memorize one juz a day, one juz total, you do every day one page. So you finish in the Quran in 20 days, because 20 pages in juz. So if you know juz amma, every day one page. 20 days, juz amma is done. If you know 2 juz, 2 pages a day. 3 juz, 3. If you know the Quran, whole Quran, like in Hafid, then they say recommend 3 juz per day. That's 3 juz, because you're going to finish in 10 days. Well, obviously, if someone just went 1 juz, he's still going to finish by the end of the month. So the idea is, that's a good measuring stick. Every juz, you know, 1 page. And it's nothing, because if you know, for example, juz amma, 1 page is nothing, if you know the whole juz. But imagine now you know more ajza, that's where you got to increase. And that's another problem. Maybe you have 10 ajza, 10 juz memorized, and you only 1 page a day. No. Or you half juz a day, brother. You know 10 juz, have 10 pages. And that's half a juz. And see, you notice that if you're doing this, you're keeping up with both sides. What you're learning and what you're keeping up. But most people, you know, the muraja'ah, the review is harder than the hifz. That's the hardest part. Why? Because the muraja'ah review will make the hifz. You're just learning new things and forgetting the other one, then you're just like learning something new every day. And it's the same thing for anything else you memorize. And you try your best to follow this habit. In the beginning, like I said, just keep going until you finish, and you can really help yourself. But if you're following this pattern, 1-2 pages a day, you know, that will really help you. And if it's too much for you, do 1 page a day. If it's too much for you, have a page. If it's too much, even a couple of lines, but you do something every day. Because memorization is a tool. Just use it or lose it. It's true. It's just like that. And that's why after a long time, you'll find yourself, mashallah, you can memorize anything. And you're going to start learning how to memorize even without seeing, sometimes by hearing, sometimes by reading it one time, because you get better and better. So inshallah, this is some of the advice. And the goal obviously is practical, brothers and sisters. So we try to be practical. We take some of this. Try yourself. Like maybe tomorrow morning, get your timer out, do it 20 times and see for yourself. You see for yourself how good it is, and maybe inshallah you'll be convinced. Okay, we'll end with this much for this section. And when I have any questions, inshallah we'll take. في Sahashri, his kitab is called Sina'atul Hifz, manufacturing Hifz, Sina'atul Hifz. So this book is one of the books, teaches you a lot about the rules, 100 something pages, 130 pages. Another book is about, I forget the name, it's about the virtues of the Quran, like the memorization, virtue memorizing. But Sina'atul Hifz is very nice. It talks about all these little benefits, tips and tricks and the things, not tricks, but tips like the Salaf use, and also some good advice about retaining the Quran, and also like some of the advice about even later on recalling what you memorized. That's the next step. When you memorize, you want to use it. Like you want to remind someone something. How do you recall it? So you can use things like association. Memorize this with this association. So when that comes up, the hadith comes up. So that's another level. But yeah, that's a good book. Another, yes. Shanaqata, yeah. How the Shanaqata, this is the Shinqiti tribe in Mauritania. How do they memorize? Ibrahim Shinqiti, I think his name is. So this is a book you can find a PDF. It's interesting. It talks about the good and the bad. So the bad is that they get beaten a lot. That's okay. So that we can't forget that part of the memorization. Huh? That's a salbiyah. He says salbiyah. That's the negative part. Right? So most of us, that's how we learn. But then we didn't really learn, right? But he talks about the good part is about how they have diet. He talks about the diet, what they eat, right? And how they do it. And again, they live in the desert. It's very interesting because the memorization has become unique. Now, again, everybody has a different way, but he analyzed just their technique. At first time, tried to record, like make it a systemic, like, okay, this is how they do it. So Faisal actually draws from something to show you some interesting examples that you can use. Anyone else? No, 3 pages. If you did just 3 pages, so just Amma, 3 pages. So you're going to finish everything you memorize by 20 days. So that's the idea. Why? Because if you want to finish the Quran roughly once a month. That's what most people are doing, and it's recommended, and some hadith makes it 40 days. So the 20 days is good because there's 20 pages in the juz. So if you're going to do 1 page every day review, at the end of the month, 20 days, you finish everything you know from memory. So that's a good way to know that you're reviewing as much as you're memorizing. Because we say we're doing 2 pages a day. So at least, how much juz do you know? So in the beginning, you're only doing 1 page, then you're doing 2 pages. The further you go, the further you review. And most people, that's what they start getting into trouble, because you're not reviewing enough. And again, review can be this way, it could be that way. Another benefit we didn't mention, when it comes to memorization, you go Nas al-Baqarah. That's the best way. Nas al-Baqarah. And the ulama recommend it. Some salaf, they differ. Can you go Nas al-Baqarah? Some say Baqarah to Nas. You can't go otherwise. But many of the ulama, like Imam Ahmed, they said, no, Nas al-Baqarah, how the kids, they do it nowadays, he said. But many ulama say it's easier, and it also is quicker to get to 10 juz or to get to the half. Obviously, Baqarah it's also, a lot of people like to memorize it because it's virtues, but the truth is, by the time you finish Baqarah, you could have done just Qad Sama', right? 3 and 3. Right? So what's the difference? What's more likely? You finish just Amma Tabar and Qad Sama', or you want to finish Surah Baqarah? This guy has how many surahs? This guy only has 1 surah. Most people get demotivated because some of the ayat are longer. So the idea is, you say go from the bottom. It's quicker for you in terms of getting more surah to read in the salawat. And also, most times you're going to hear those surahs. It's also a reality, right? If you Surah Baqarah, maybe, once in a while you hear it. So that's another thing that they mention. Any other questions? Okay, last one, brother. Yes. So the brother's asking, is it simple to remember, to forget the Quran? Yes, that's why it's a challenge. The Quran is easy to memorize, easy to forget. And the reason why is that to continue to encourage you to memorize it and to review it. Ta'ahad al-Quran, the Prophet Nabi said, review the Quran a lot, but the Quran is quicker to leave your memory than like a camel from its tide post. So that's the secret. The idea is that you can memorize quickly and forget quickly. So the person who's always on point in memorization, what is his secret? He reviews a lot. It's always an ibadah, so you get hasanat, a lot. So this is encouragement. Sharia came with hikmah. Someone memorized one time, put the book away, khalas, I finish the Quran and I move on with life. But if you say half, it's always reviewing all the memorization, you get the reward. So the goal then will be like you're always going to be reviewing the Quran throughout your life. So, but the good news is the more you review, and obviously it's easy to review it. So then you can start understanding how some of the Imams finished the whole Quran one night. I mean, how much time were they reading the Quran? It's probably very easy for them. Like many of us, we don't realize that it goes in the beginning slow, then it gets very fast. But the goal is to memorize the Quran all the time, and it's beautiful to review it all the time, and you're going to enjoy it. So yes, that's the key. But things scholars say, what if someone forgets the Quran? That's not good. Right? That's blameworthy to learn it and forget it. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam criticized someone who does that. But that doesn't mean then, if you forgot some parts are sinful, it's natural to nature to forget. But we said last week that the affliction of the student knowledge are two: nisyan, natural forgetfulness, wa tark al-mudhakara. That's the problem. The one you forgot to review. So humans, we always forget. But the problem is that you're going to forget, but don't make yourself forget too by not reviewing. Because then you can't make an excuse. You can't say, I forgot. No, you're made to forget. You don't review. And some of the Imams, they said, that we forgot, what we forgot is more than what we know now. And that's true. Some of the ulama, what knowledge they forgot later in their life, because they're getting old, is probably more than what someone has the whole life. But Imam Sha'bi is saying something like this. The amount of stuff that we later forgot, because you get older. So the goal is just keep reviewing, and this is another encouragement, just to when you memorize something, just to review. And some teachers are very strict like that they focus more on review than memorization. But the balance is like do a little bit and then review a little bit, review. طيب, inshallah, we'll end with this much. We'll go to the second half now. Subhanallah, bihamdika, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.